Alright, with the Knuckles series that released in April and Sonic Movie 3 releasing in December, that revived my interest in the Sonic movie franchise that I really haven't heard anything about in 2 years. Like, it's been some time since the last Sonic movie released. So yeah, ever since the Knuckles series released, I've been watching so many videos on Sonic games and lore just to expand my knowledge and get ready for the next movie. I have played Sonic games before, but I started with the storybook games and ended with Colors. It was a short window. There were some enjoyable games in that mix, but it just wasn't Sonic in its quote-unquote heyday like in the 90s or the adventure games, stuff like that. So it was nice getting to learn a lot about Sonic and his friends, and having all of this knowledge and understanding ahead of the premiere of Sonic the Hedgehog 3, the movie, makes it a really exciting time to be a Sonic fan. But speaking of the movies, this is about the movie, so it's time to switch topics to them. I'm going to give a short synopsis of both of the Sonic movies rather than a full recap of every single event that happened in the movie, because that's what the movie is for. Then, when I finish giving a basic synopsis, I'll say what worked, what didn't work, and which movie is ultimately better. Alright, it's time to get in here. The first movie sees a young Sonic escape to Earth after his guardian in Longclaw was terminated by the Echidnas because of Sonic's immaturity when it came to hiding his speed. 10 years later, he settled down in Green Hills, Montana, but he had to stay in hiding, and because of this, he could never make any friends. One night, Sonic just had it with being alone and accidentally caused a blackout that got the government, led by Dr. Robotnik, to search for him. And on the next day, while hiding out in the Wachowski shed, Tom tranquilized Sonic while he was trying to escape, which caused Sonic to drop his rings in a portal, which landed on a skyscraper. And the rest of the movie follows Sonic and Tom trying to get the rings back while avoiding Dr. Eggman. There's things to like here, and potentially some things to dislike. Starting off with the good. The plot is of good quality. The movie is a rare, modern example of having a meaningful plot, but without fluff, without trying to branch off into a bunch of different, convoluted plot points under the assumption that more means better. The movie has good themes of friendship and acceptance, so I like that it didn't become secondary or have to share screen time with something else. It's a nice story about Sonic finding family, finding a parental figure, and most importantly, finding a friend after he lost the only person that cared about him all those years ago. Also, for Tom's plot, although it's not necessarily realistic, it's kind of just there to have a nice and happy ending. I still liked how Sonic taught Tom the value of protecting the people that he loves, which got Tom to turn down a better police officer position in San Francisco to protect Green Hills and the people that he grew an attachment to. Like I said, it's not realistic. Like, if it's me, I'm not sorry at all. I'm going to San Francisco, but this movie isn't real life, it's fiction, and for this movie, that aspect gave it a nice, heartwarming ending. Story-wise, the movie didn't take any big swings or risk a lot. Like, it wasn't the most adventurous, never before seen thing ever, which definitely hindered its ability to be the greatest movie ever. Like, the greats, they took big swings for sure, so it's not an all-timer, but the movie played it safe, and that's the main word that I'd use to describe this plot: safe. It's a safe plot, an overall stable, easy to understand experience that doesn't really have many controversy points or things to complain about. Having some game knowledge helps, but it isn't required, which I liked, because if they were going to base the plot on some games, it was probably going to be on some old stuff, some quote-unquote golden age, 90s or early 2000s stuff that I never played, or some more modern Sonic games that I never played. So that's another way that they played it safe. I like that they didn't alienate certain sections of their audience, and they made a movie that all generations of Sonic fans could potentially find some enjoyment in. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a lot of credit for that. For the next positive, I've got to say that this movie was good at keeping the focus on Sonic, the titular character. I'm just coming off of watching the Knuckles series where Wade Whipple was undeniably the main character, while Knuckles was the secondary. Speaking of Wade, it's been so long since I've watched these movies, so when making the Knuckles video, I actually didn't acknowledge that Wade was already a character in the Sonic movie universe, and I was surprised to see him in these movies. But yeah, like I said, in the Knuckles show, Wade dominated the screen time, so it's refreshing to see a movie that kept the focus on Sonic rather than the human characters. Even when it came to Tom's plot about leaving Green Hills to accept a nicer police role in San Francisco, that was there, but it didn't dominate the screen time like Wade's bowling tournament. This right here felt like a story that Sonic could call his own. It's ridiculous that this is even a positive because this sort of stuff should just be common decency and expected from projects like this. But unfortunately, it's not as common as I'd like it to be. Every animation meets real world movie doesn't always need a human character, a Hollywood name to split screen time with the titular character and act as a hand holder of sorts. Let Sonic cook and good things will happen, considering that he's the character that got people in the seats to watch the movie. So I like that the focus was kept on Sonic, and Sonic himself was visible for a lot of this movie, meaning that there weren't any moments or stretches that made me say, oh, the animation budget is running drier than the Sahara Desert, which I might revisit this point later, potentially. But yeah, Sonic was very visible, and even when non-Sonic characters were interacting, most of the dialogue and actions being taken were Sonic based in relation to Sonic. So I love that this movie stayed on track when it came to Sonic. Lastly, for the good, I have to say that it was good for them to take the audience feedback when it came to making this movie. I remember exactly where I was in 2019 when the infamous first Sonic movie trailer came out. Like, it was that monumental. There were plenty of things to point out that were wrong or at least questionable with the trailer, like Sonic's original design that legitimately looked like a guy in a Sonic costume. That's what I originally thought it was. Also, there was Sonic not being able to dodge a tranq dart, but he was able to dodge a bunch of missiles, which still made it into the movie. But I'm just pointing out the major sticking points, the controversial points that got complained about. Also, there was the fact that a mainly kids targeted Sonic movie was playing Gangster's Paradise in the trailer. So while the trailer was taking the internet by storm, at the time, Detective Pikachu was on its way out, and it didn't necessarily start a Pokemon versus Sonic war. At least I don't remember it happening that way, but there were a lot of comparisons for sure. Like, it was the go-to for how to make a live action video game adaptation. Funny enough, years later, Sonic is about to have 3 movies and it has a Knuckles series. Meanwhile, nothing from Detective Pikachu. It's kind of a trending fad, just like Baldi's Basics, and I'm a Pokemon fan, but it's just crazy how that all worked out based on how things were looking at the time. But getting back on topic, the trailer led to a lot of outcry. Now for me, I had a problem with Sonic's design, but that wasn't going to stop me from watching the movie. I hate just sitting there and accepting mediocrity or bad things, cough cough, Charlotte Hornets, but also like it's a video game character on the big screen, and I like Sonic way more than Pokemon, so I was going regardless just to see what it's like, see if there's anything good, and maybe compare and contrast the two movies. So while this didn't really affect me much, it's nice that they delayed its original November 2019 premiere date to a February 2020 premiere date and spent millions of dollars to redesign Sonic. Even if the original design wasn't going to turn me away from this movie, I've got to say, the redesign looks much better and much more faithful to the games that I grew up with, the games that even got me interested in Sonic in the first place, so that's nice. I remember at this time, there was this debate over the fans having too much power and they shouldn't be able to change the creator's original vision so easily. There's some stuff that I agree and disagree with in that whole debate, but I'm not going to get into it here. I'm just saying that the redesign worked out for the better and I'm thankful that it was able to happen. Now for the negatives, or negative. Like I said, this was a safe movie that's really tough to find something wrong with, so the only potential negative that I could come up with was the style that the movie was made in. Going with the live action format didn't make this movie bad at all. It was still a great movie, but post Mario movie, after seeing that, I kind of wish that the Sonic movie had some of that. I kind of wish that the Sonic movie didn't box itself into the live action format. There's just more possibilities when going with the animated style. Like, it's not confined to the realness of planet Earth and human acting, stuff like that. They could get really artistic and adventurous with animated movies and just have endless possibilities, eh? Also, while I'm on this, I have to say that while the human characters weren't overbearing in this movie, I could see that being a problem down the line. Live action movies based on animated properties still need real people, and they always seem to find the need to give them a plot line. The first movie only had Sonic to focus on, so they succeeded. But what happens in the third movie when Shadow gets his introduction? And since it seems like they're adapting Sonic Adventure 2 somewhat, maybe Amy and Rouge get an introduction, so I can't really see where the screen time comes from. How is it going to get dispersed? How are they going to get their shine while focusing on Donut Lord and Pretzel Lady? Like, at the end of the day, someone is going to get left out, literally, not even be in the movie, or they'll get a very flimsy role. Maybe as the movie series goes on, they'll phase out the human characters in favor of the extraterrestrials, but that wouldn't be something to worry about if the movie was animated from the beginning. So while the live action format didn't turn out bad for this movie specifically, I've got to say that I see a way that the movie franchise could have been better if they went animated. But that's it for Sonic Movie 1. Now on to Sonic Movie 2. This movie sees Sonic now living with the Wachowskis, but that's not enough for him as he sneaks out at night seeking adventure and trying to be a hero, and even though he somewhat prevails in the end, his actions end up causing a lot of harm to people around him, which gets him sort of an immature and irresponsible label, which Tom tries to tell Sonic about, but he doesn't seem to be willing to learn at this point in the movie. This is the overlying conflict that Sonic has to deal with in this movie, while for the immediate conflict, Eggman is back on Earth and now he has a partner in Knuckles the Echidna. But Sonic also gained a partner in this movie, Tails the Fox, and basically these two pairings are racing to be the first one to the Master Emerald, which grants unbelievable power to anyone that possesses it. Just like the first movie, there's stuff to like here and stuff to dislike. Starting out with the good. Everything about the characters is great. The designs and voice acting are amazing, but for this one, I was mostly talking about characterization and how they were written. I love that Knuckles and Tails don't come into this movie knowing Sonic in person and being friends with him from the jump, so this movie can somewhat have an origin story aspect, and I can see how they built up their relationship and how these guys became the big three, so that's nice. For Knuckles, in modern portrayals of him, he's sort of a dumb, hot-headed, comedic punching bag feeling like a caricature rather than an actual character with some meaning to him. The Knuckles character is hard to get right, so I decided that as long as Knuckles isn't a walking ball of cringe in this movie, then he was going to get a passing grade, and that's what happened. I like that in this movie, Knuckles is certainly a fish out of water when it comes to some of his social interactions and learning about values other than the ones that he was raised with, but he's not a dumb character at all. Like I said, he's just a fish out of water on Earth. I also like how they talk about Knuckles' backstory of losing his father in war, which explains why Knuckles is the way that he is. They gave a lot of effort when trying to make a Knuckles that would be different from his one-dimensional portrayals as of late, and they succeeded. He's actually a bearable character to watch on screen instead of just a joke, so they nailed Knuckles. But character-wise, the highlight of this movie is the friendship of Sonic and Tails. Tails came in as a little brother figure to Sonic, so one of the best parts was when they got caught up in the Siberia incident and Sonic led the way for Tails in the dancing competition, both looking out for Tails and giving Tails a life-changing experience, giving him a friend, finally. It was so nice to see this happen, considering how Tails didn't have friends because of his double tail, so he never really got to experience anything like that. So yeah, I love their journey throughout this movie and how they both fulfilled needs for each other. Sonic being Tails' first friend, and what happened to Tails getting Sonic to mature more into a real hero, rather than the reckless version of him at the beginning of this movie. The plot is slightly better than the one from the first movie, but that's only because of the characters. The characters made this movie more than the plot. That's why the characters get this section. This is going to be a shorter section here, but I just have to say that this movie feels more like a Sonic adventure than the last one because they were able to incorporate more stuff from the games, like the Master Emerald into the story, which was more grand and familiar than what they had going on in the previous movie. Also, this is something that could probably go back to the characters as well, but the addition of Knuckles and Tails really helped when it came to action and creating memorable scenes, just because of the fact that they're extraterrestrial characters that have more capabilities than humans. Like the Knuckles vs Sonic fights were electric and better than any fight that the last movie could offer because they were mostly against Dr. Eggman's robots. And the finale, when Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles teamed up to defeat Dr. Robotnik this time, was more action-packed than the last time, especially since Sonic turned into Super Sonic, whereas in the previous movie, the only ones that could provide memorable action scenes were Sonic and Eggman. So yeah, Knuckles and Tails were a big reason for why this movie felt more thrilling than the previous entry. Now for the bad. Unlike my negative for Sonic Movie 1, this time the negative actually takes away from the movie and ruins the experience, and there's no way around it. In the last movie, they kept the human characters in check, but in this movie, they were unleashed, wink wink. But yeah, it's the wedding. It's just so awful. Now, despite me saying that it was awful, there was actually only one stretch of time that was really bad. Right in the middle of the movie, there was like this 7-minute stretch of time where there was no Sonic, Tails, or Knuckles, and the movie shifted to a human takeover, focusing on Rachel and Maddie going on this little adventure to try and free Sonic, Tails, and Donut Lord. Then there was the Rachel and Randall conflict, to which they ended up reconciling. But for this whole stretch, I was just sitting here thinking like, what am I watching? Is this even Sonic anymore? Before it got to that point, the movie was in a great place, with Sonic and Tails escaping from Eggman and Knuckles just to reach the lowest low of the whole movie series up to this point. Not even trying to be funny, but this stuff had me wondering if the animation budget was a problem, and that's why they gave the animated characters some downtime. I'd much rather it be that than be that the wedding madness was an actual planned writing decision that was there from the start, not even taking budget into account. they totally fumbled on this part of the movie. And even though the whole wedding wasn't that bad and they made it have some plot significance in the end with Sonic finding his own wingmen in Knuckles and Tails, even with all that, I just would have liked to see the wedding get cut out of the movie. It didn't add much to the movie and it was just a way to keep the human characters keep their big name actors involved to get their money's worth, which was always the problem with going the live action route. They're always cutting away from the action or interesting moments just to give a little update on this wedding that I don't care about, which is a huge problem and totally ruins the pacing of the movie. The adventure and the fun all just comes to a screeching halt whenever they went over to the wedding. This movie was 2 hours long compared to Sonic Movie 1's hour and 40-minute runtime, the difference being this useless wedding. Without the wedding, they could have made a shorter movie, which is perfect for me. I don't like movies that creep into that 2-hour range, so I would prefer that more than keeping the 2 hours and fleshing out Sonic's story more because it was already told well. It doesn't need more details. It just needed to be told without any interruptions. But both options would have been better than the wedding. So yeah, the wedding ends up being the biggest low point in all of the movies. Now for which one is better, it's a tough call. Either go with the steadier, risk-averse Sonic Movie 1 or the more adventurous Sonic Movie 2. In the end, I'm going to say that Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a better movie. The movie has lower lows than Sonic 1, that being the wedding. Meanwhile, Sonic Movie 1 didn't have any serious lows, but Sonic 2 had higher highs than Sonic 1, and that's going to outweigh. It took more swings just by having Knuckles and Tails in the movie and getting their characters right. Also, the action was way better in this movie when compared to Sonic Movie 1, and they were able to give this movie a more Sonic feel by incorporating more stuff from the games into the movie, like the Master Emerald. Like, this feels more like a Sonic adventure. Sonic Movie 1 feels more introductory, as it should because it's the first movie, while Sonic Movie 2 feels more grand in certain ways. It's really not a surprise that Sonic Movie 2 is better than Sonic Movie 1 because sequels usually either add more to the universe or fix mistakes that were present in the first movie. I love Sonic Movie 1 and it holds a special place with me because it was the last thing that I watched, the last public experience outside of school before the world shut down in 2020, so I'm always going to be thankful for that. But in the end, Sonic Movie 2 is better, and that's a good sign going forward for Sonic Movie 3. It would be a bad sign if the franchise peaked 4 years ago, which isn't what happened. They're still going up. But in the end, above all else, the main thing that matters is that they're both way better than the Mario movie. Alright, that's it.